Okay, Wildcat. Today we're looking at journal page 6, graphs of cube and cube root parent functions. Let's start by looking at cubic parent function. Okay. Now, when x is -2, f of -2 equals, and we come to here, we know the function is f of x equals x cubed. Okay. So that's -2 cubed, which -2 cubed is -8. -1 cubed is -1. 0 cubed is 0. 1 cubed is 1. And 2 cubed is 8. Okay, now let's look at what we mean when I say third difference in y. So you ask yourself, well, what do you do to -8 to get -1? Well, you add 7. What do you do to -1 to get to 0? You add 1. What do you do to get from 0 to 1? You add 1. What do you do to get from 1 to 8? You add 7. Okay? And really, you don't need to put the plus on. I think that adds too much to it, so let me tweak that a little bit. Now, you'll notice the first difference isn't the same, so now let's go to the second difference. Okay? What do you do to 7 to get to 1? You subtract 6. What do you do to get from 1 to 1? You do nothing at 0. What do you do to get from 1 to 6? You add 6. Okay? Now, here, second difference, you notice they're not the same, so now let's look at the third difference. What do you do to -6 to get 0? You add 6. And what do you do to get from 0 to 6? You add 6. You see that the third difference is the same. Okay? All right. So now let's take a look at the function. Well, we know it's f of x equals x cubed. These tables match the graph. You see that -2, -8, -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 8. The domain, because it's infinite on the left and right and bottom to top, the domain is -infinity to +infinity, and range is -infinity to +infinity. And you'll notice here that I've included the inequality notation. Now, go back and look at your notes and make sure I didn't make a mistake on any of the domain and ranges. In inequality notation, domain is the x and range is y. Sometimes I think I might have put an x there, but double check, okay? All right, so if you would, go ahead and finish up cubic parent functions. All right, now let's take a look at cube root parent functions, okay? Now, when x is -8, f of -8 equals, well, the cube root of x, okay? So the cube root of -8 is -2. The cube root of -1 is -1. The cube root of 0 equals 0. The cube root of 1 equals 1. And then the cube root of 8 equals 2. All right, now let's take a look here. It says third difference in x. So let's look at, what do you do to -8 to get -1? Well, you add 7. What do you do to get from -1 to 0? You add 1. What do you get from 0 to 1? You add 1. And what do you do to get from 1 to 8? You add 7. You'll see the first difference are not the same. So now let's go to the second difference. What do you do to 7 to get to 1? You subtract 6. What do you do to get from 1 to 1? You add or subtract 0. And what do you do to get from 1 to 7? You add 6. Okay. Now let's look at the third difference. What do you do to get from -6 to 0? Well, you add 6. What do you do to get from 0 to 6? You add 6. You see the third difference x is the same. All right, now let's take a look at domain and range. Now, domain from left to right is infinite in both directions, and from bottom to top is infinite in both directions. So domain is negative infinity to positive infinity, and range is negative infinity to positive infinity. And you can see here that I've written the domain range in inequality notation. Okay, so if you would, go ahead and finish up cube root parent functions. All right, so now that you have that, again, I recommend working some more on the 1.2 my.hrw.com assignment and work on the problems that have to do with cube and cube root parent functions. Then done with that, don't forget to work on the Khan Academy SAT prep for 10 minutes. Okay, so with that, have a wonderful Wildcat day.